World leaders must address these points following the Sharm el-Sheikh summit to ensure lasting peace in the region. How easy or difficult will it prove to be ironing out all these details and also establishing a Palestinian state, the two-state solution, as Mr. Dawood has mentioned?
Well, Mr. Dawood is absolutely correct when he raises the point that the two-state solution is of the utmost importance, or a one-state solution where the Palestinians have the right of self-determination and full rights. That is unlikely. So we need the two-state solution, especially after this war of retribution and the massive numbers of Palestinians who have been killed, slaughtered during this war. Tragically, Israel's war of retribution has sown the seeds of revenge. As Mr. Dawood correctly points out, we now have another generation of Palestinians who have lost grandparents, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, loved ones. And in order to prevent these seeds of revenge from growing up and harvesting a bitter fruit in the future for Israel, the most important thing is the creation of the two-state solution. The Palestinians need the right of self-determination because they need hope for the future. They need hope that this process will lead to a better life where they have hospitals, jobs, homes, and where they do not have to live in fear of Israeli jets, bombs, missiles, drones, attacks during the night. And indeed, all of Israel's neighbors, Syria, Lebanon, need this assurance. And this is why this upcoming process is of the utmost importance. We have the European nations are now interested in redevelopment. Germany wants to be part of a redevelopment group. We now have nations rushing in. There's an old expression that victory has 1,000 fathers while defeat is an orphan. Well, we have had decades of defeat, no peace in Palestine. Now we have a chance for peace moving forward, and the other nations involved, in particular our Arab partners, are going to be of the utmost importance in speaking up for the rights of the Palestinian, keeping for example, the independent technocrat, the Independent Committee of Palestinian Technocrats. It is going to be very important that these are independent thinkers who are looking out for the interests of the Palestinian people and not mere mouthpieces or lackeys of the Israeli government. We need essentially the clearing of the rubble, the recovering of the bodies buried under the rubble is going to be the most difficult component, and especially while other nations are trying to determine how they can be involved, who is going to pay for the clearing of the rubble, who is going to facilitate distributing the humanitarian aid and the food, while the United Nations and the Red Cross, and in particular the United Nations, are reestablishing humanitarian aid centers. So there are so many details that need to be worked out. The biggest danger, which Americans should realize, when we went into Iraq, we de-Baathified Iraq. We got rid of all the Ba'athist party members. Well, it turned out they were the experienced administrators and bureaucrats of the government. And when we the de-Baathification of Iraq was a big hindrance in getting the governing bodies of Iraq back up and running. So that's what we need to keep in mind. Hamas is the legitimate civil governing authority. They handle the garbage pickup, the police force, administration of agencies. So Hamas, it is critical that Hamas is allowed to participate in phase 2. And the other points of the plan, for example, the reforming or rehabilitation of the Palestinian Authority, Americans view that with suspicion. Anything that looks like reforming a group is suspiciously like re-education, perhaps indoctrination, brainwashing, and the Palestinian people need the right to remember their own history, to establish museums. They need the right to talk about this genocide. So reforming the governing authority, the Palestinian Authority, there are points in this plan that are problematic. The lack of details is a problem with determining timelines and responsibility, accountability, but the lack of details also give us a great deal of flexibility as we work through the details, what needs to be done. And once again, Hamas does need to be part of phase two.
Mr. Dawood, if we're looking at the bilateral relationship between Egypt and the US, the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and President Trump co-chaired this peace summit. How is the ongoing cooperation between both Egypt and the United States help in building momentum for peace? Where do their long-term visions for the region most closely align?
Well, let me first thank Mrs. Chapman in Washington for her deep understanding and fair stand on the Palestinian issue. But at the same time, there is no question that Egypt and the United States have had the historic relationship, and the peace deal that was mediated by former late President Jimmy Carter was the cornerstone for all the other peace agreements that followed. And as President Sisi stated in his speech yesterday, that the key Arab nations, as well as Turkey, Pakistan, and Indonesia, all the nations that whose leaders met with President Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly 3 weeks ago, are committed to peace as a strategic choice. So, I mean, I hope that President Trump understands the importance of this statement, despite the bitterness and the pain and the horror of the war that we have lived through for 2 years, with the world standing and watching this massacre of unprecedented levels and war crimes that were committed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his the top defense officials. Let's not forget, Hani, that the International Court of the International Criminal Court has already issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for their intentional policy of mass killing and crimes against humanity, and using even food and medicine and fuel as weapons of war to bring the Palestinian people to submit and to implement their original plan for the forced displacement of all the Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt. And as you know, this has been a key declared policy by the Israeli government, except for the sincere effort that was exerted by Egypt, whether with the Biden administration or with the Trump administration, to confirm that this is not ever going to be the solution for the Palestinian problem. As a matter of fact, it will create instability in the region for decades to come, not alone liquidating the Palestinian cause and preventing the Palestinian people from their legitimate rights. So, I mean, again, maintaining this level of cooperation between Egypt and the United States is definitely going to be key to the success of the Gaza peace plan or any future arrangements that we are going to see to assure the end of war and the beginning of a new era of peace in this region.
Yes. Ms. Chapman, the exchange of detainees was the first tangible result of the ceasefire agreement. Does the successful execution of this swap provide a stronger foundation for the summit's primary goal of consolidating the ceasefire and ensuring a more lasting security, or was this swap successful because all parties involved really wanted it, including the Israeli government?
Yes, Mr. Haney, you are correct. All parties wanted the exchange to happen. Even President Trump, he was elated and he was most happy that the hostages on both sides are returned home. This is a positive first step, and it lays the groundwork for positive steps moving forward. Of course, everyone is apprehensive that without the leverage of the hostages, Israel could take the opportunity to once again resume bombing and the slaughter of the Palestinians. However, we are hoping that this time will be different, and that's because this time The world is watching. This time the world will not stand by for as long. We already have the mechanisms in place with the United Nations. If the killing resumes,
Yes.
we have options. However, the main thing is, and also phase two, this is where we have to keep the closest eye on Israel and Netanyahu. Phase two is where if Netanyahu tries any sort of strategic or tactical resumption of the bombing of Gaza, it will be in this instance. However, Trump is putting sufficient pressure on Netanyahu that this should keep Netanyahu corralled and contained. Also, what we also want to watch out for is that Netanyahu will have a distraction by having a ceasefire in Gaza so that he can then attack Iran again. So Netanyahu needs to be contained. And we did even see Trump in his speech make a comment about Netanyahu needs a pardon, his corruption charges on champagne and cigars, even though we know it was more than just champagne and cigars. So Netanyahu himself is walking a fine line with his own cabinet, with his own people, with the International Criminal Court. There is a warrant out for his arrest. So Netanyahu needs to walk a fine line as well.